Oki, Nutaniku, Aki Kakato Siaki. Nutaniku, Jenn Patai Poiwa. Good evening, my name is Jenn, EagleSpeaker. I greet you in the traditional way of the Blackfeet people. I am Blackfeet and Nakota Sioux, or Assiniboine. I'm the Client Service Coordinator for North Helpline. Tonight, I would like to acknowledge that for 34 years now, North Helpline has served as a guiding light in the Northwest, an area that is on the unceded traditional ancestral lands that belong to the original inhabitants, the Coast Salish people, including but not limited to the Duwamish, the Muckleshoot, the Snoqualmie, the Suquamish, the Stillaguamish, and the Tulalip. They have hunted, fished, and gathered and taken care of these lands since time immemorial. We respect their sovereignty and the right to self-determination and to honor the sacred spiritual connection to the land and the water. These acknowledgements do not fulfill any obligation to build and care for authentic relationships with Indigenous peoples and the communities, but to serve as a small stepping stone in honoring the land that we are on. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes the people's stories and voices to form a more equitable and just society. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Billow, and I'm the chairperson of our board. And I want to sincerely welcome you all to Polaris. I love Polaris because it's an opportunity for all of us to gather in person, to learn about our community, to dress up, and to enjoy some wonderful food. I'm excited to be sharing this evening with all of you. North Helpline has been through a few challenging years. Like many organizations, we've faced staff turnover, burnout, challenges delivering services, shortages of volunteers, and an uphill battle for funding and increased food costs, labor costs, and issues with our personal space. And I think it's important to name those challenges and recognize that it's not the challenges that make or break an organization, but it's how that we deal with those challenges. And despite those challenges, we've come out a better organization. Through it all, we stayed true to our mission of assisting our neighbors and obtaining basic needs that affirm their human dignity and worth, and we continue to envision a future where all of our neighbors have food on their tables and a roof overhead. I'm personally a numbers person, so I thought I would demonstrate just what I mean by that. In 2022, we were able to assist 716 families with financial assistance. That's 716 families that were able to pay their rent, their utility bills, or cover their moving costs, and that's just incredible. On a monthly basis, we saw roughly 600 households in our Lake City location and 300 households in our Bitter Lake location accessing the food bank. That translates to about 35,000 visits to our food bank in 2022. That's incredible. This year, we saw shortages from our normal amount of food sources, and we found funding to increase our food purchasing budget, things that we haven't done in the past. We saw a decrease in the amount of food donated, but we still saw an increase in the amount of food distributed. Our home delivery program, and I want to stop here because I really don't think this gets as much attention as it should. We are able to deliver groceries and household items to neighbors who cannot go to the food bank for distribution. Twice a month, we're able to get food to neighbors who otherwise wouldn't be able to get food. Almost 200 unique households a month are able to get food and household items delivered directly to their home. But for me, the numbers only tell part of the story. As much as I love quantitative data, we know that the qualitative data can help paint a brighter picture. The impact of North Helpline in the community is much more than the numbers on our impact report. It's seeing the families able to make a meal together. It's hearing older adults talk about volunteering with one another. It's hearing a language you're familiar with when you walk through our doors. It's listening to a neighbor talk about their transition into permanent housing. It's seeing someone who looks like you represented in our staff. and it's knowing that there's a place for you at North Helpline. Our neighbor, Pia, said this about North Helpline. They make you feel like family. They're a great resource to help people in many ways, both mentally, food-wise, health-wise, and financially. So we're gonna do a little exercise. I wanna start with just a few round of applause. So if you could just clap after each one. So first I wanna acknowledge our sponsors. This is such a beautiful event, and you guys have made it possible. So thank you to our 2023 Polaris sponsors. There's also a few other organizations and candidates here in force with us today. So a huge thank to Lake City Partners Ending Homelessness, the Northeast Seattle Rotary, Hunger Intervention Program, and the D5 council member candidates. Thank you all for attending and for the work that you're doing in our community. And the next part is actually my favorite. So if you could stand if you fit into these categories. So firstly, to our lovely board of directors, so could you all please stand? Woo! I want to thank you all for your dedication to North Helpline and for your willingness to have me as your leader. We appreciate all the work you do, so thank you. All right, next are our volunteers. If you are volunteered with North Helpline or you have in the past, please stand up. To our incredible volunteers, without you, we would not exist. We would not be the same and we would not be nearly as fun. So thank you for all your time and energy to make North Helpline the way it is. Thank you. All right, and next staff. Could our staff please stand, our lovely staff? Woo! It's hard to begin on this one, but you really are the backbone of our organization. You are the glue that keeps us together, and your passion for the organization and your hard work does not go unnoticed. I want to give you a special shout out to Oliver and Stacy for such a wonderful event, but all of you, thank you. All right, and last but not least, could everyone please stand up? Everyone. To our community, whether this is your first time hearing about North Helpline or you've been with us from the beginning, what you do matters. So thank you for being here tonight.
All right, welcome everybody. This is a night that we look forward to all year, except for maybe Oliver and Stacy, besides it being over. Another great shout out to Oliver and Stacy, our development team, and Emerson and Latina, who helped a lot getting the details put together tonight, so thank you. And thank you, Jen, for that lovely land acknowledgement. So many thank yous, I love it. I have the lovely job this evening, the privilege of honoring the Hunger Intervention Program with our North Star Award. Hunger Intervention Program, or HIP, as I will refer to it for the rest of the speech, is one of our wonderful community partners who walks alongside us as we serve the community. And they serve addressing food access in many ways. And you're here to support a food access organization tonight, but HIP is an organization in our community that is really focused on meals, meals for our seniors, meals for summer meals for kids that just got wrapped up. They are all over the city doing different sites, and meals at our shelter at the Shoreline Oaks shelter, as they're feeding folks every day up there. just to name a few programs that they do. This enables us to really focus on the work that we do. So the work that we do, giving out groceries to folks when they come see us, or bringing groceries to people. We don't need to think about launching a meal program because we have wonderful partners that do it so very well, and we're very grateful for that. There's also, so in the last 10 years, our organizations have kind of grown alongside each other. Darcy and I both started at our organizations as AmeriCorps, and are now in leadership positions. And I always have my eye on what exciting new thing HIP is doing and what we can learn from that, and apply that learning to our work as well. They're also very willing to collaborate in any way. If I have a question about PTO policies or anything like that, we're always meeting and trying to figure those things out, as well as collaborating with other organizations in Lake City. We do a collaborative project so that more organizations are able to have MSW students, or the Masters of Social Work students at North Helpline, at Literacy Source, at the North Seattle Family Center, and that's led by HIP and Literacy Source. So we're very grateful for that as well. They're always willing to share their knowledge and their work, and we're so grateful for that. You work tirelessly to achieve your vision of nutritional food that is accessible to everyone in the community, and you breathe joy into all that you do. So thank you for being such a wonderful partner, and we are very excited to give you a beautiful award handcrafted by our lovely staff member, Jenn. I would like to invite you onto stage to receive it.
I want to say thank you so much from everyone at HIP, from my co-executive director, Srijan Chakraborty, who could not make it tonight, from all of my other coworkers who I will let say hello in just a moment. I just want to echo what Kelly said, that I feel that this journey of 10-ish years working alongside each other has been an era of learning how to each do what we do the best we can on our own, but also in the same way learning how we can do what we do together best we can do. I think I occasionally stick my head out of the Northeast Seattle environment, and I learned that what we have here is not actually something that exists everywhere, and that is something that is actually very special and unique to this area. So I'm intensely grateful for you all, for this evening, for this pair that I truly will live in the most cherished area of our office for the rest of our days. I truly can't thank you enough. And so that's enough for me, and I'll help you with this pair and just let you say hello very quickly.
Hi, I'm Tony, the development manager at HIP, and I just want to say it's just a treasure and a delight to be with so many people who care about community, who care about poverty, and who care about hunger in our community. Go you.
I'll just saying a quick hello, Finica, the board chair at HIP, and just want to extend our thanks to everyone at North Helpline and to everyone here tonight for caring about food access, housing stability, homelessness prevention in our community. I think these are issues that all are challenging and intertwined, and thus we can't do alone. So really appreciate North Helpline's collaboration over the years. And thank you all for being here, and hope you all continue to be at the table.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. You can hear me okay? Okay, fantastic. So you're a rowdy bunch. This is fun. I'm enjoying myself as an event. Holy smokes. So not only am the CEO of Crisis Connections, I'm also known tonight as well as the wife of the first person who won the raffle, my wife, Carrie. So let me first put on my over 50 costume here, and also just congratulate you all. Hey, we made it through the pandemic. As of May, we're in a post-pandemic world. But can we go back? Can talk about the last 3 years? What the hell? Does any of this resonate with folks? Remember wiping down your groceries? Fighting with your uncle about vaccines? Getting or giving the side eye at the grocery store because you didn't have your mask on? Binge watching so much that you didn't know when you got off the couch if your legs would work? Zoom happy hours, that's all behind us. On and on and on. It's been a ride. Any of these images resonate with folks feeling this way? Yeah, it's okay. We're all together. It's collective trauma. That's what's happening, and I'm feeling it, and really we're all feeling it. So this would be a good time to talk a little bit more about the services of crisis connections. So we are unique in what Kelly was saying, that we really serve people who are seeking compassionate, confidential support. And so we have a number of lines that we operate, but we specialize in helplines, text, and chat. And so that's our niche. But I want to just take a poll a little bit. There's also a lot of different services out there. We want to make sure that people know that there's just a few right doors you can go through to be able to get connected to services, including North Helpline. So who here has not heard of 911? Okay, I tricked you because I've heard of 911. That is just part of our whole human experience, thank goodness. So emergencies, medical, crime, and so forth. What about 988? Who's heard of 988 so far? A few of you. Yep, so that's our national helpline, and Crisis Connections is one of the providers of the 988 helpline. And then hands again, how many people are aware of the 211 dialing code? Oh, very good, awesome. So we provide that service for King County. Oh, by the way, so I've been doing a lot of kind of research on the generational gaps and really trying to understand Gen Z. And so I'm a proud Gen Xer, and in my research, I discovered that Gen Xers really, really, really love graphics. So other Gen Xers in the room, you're gonna be really happy tonight because I got a whole bunch of graphics. So I want to home in a little bit more on 211 because there's a lot of rich data around who is calling, texting, and chatting 211. So again, real briefly, who is calling? 211 is a prevention program. What we want to be able to do is have people contact 211, get connected to the right resource in their community so that we can prevent them from needing to call 988 and certainly call 911. And so we serve about 200, 300 individuals and families per year through 211. And again, one of the major organizations that we are connecting folks to, again, we want to have the right resource and accessible to folks, is North Helpline. And so you noticed here the needs that people are calling, 80% are really in the housing realm. Getting people housed, even if it's short term, stay in their home, eviction prevention. Again, prevention, prevention, prevention. And then, of course, permanent housing and being able to stay in with rent and mortgage. So this, when it comes to accessing food, that's on the list as well. North Helpline does that. Utility shutoff prevention, North Helpline is doing that. Homelessness prevention, I'm not sure if this is one of the statistics that was shared before, but last year, North Helpline dispersed over $360,000 to keep people housed and keep their electricity on. So that's phenomenal. Let's keep people in their homes. Because when people call 211, we're able to collect quite a bit of information with their consent around why are they calling, what are the needs, zip codes and so forth, because again, they're seeking the services that you saw in there. So I was able to pull data specific to the zip codes that North Helpline supports. And I wanted to share a little bit with you to just talk about some of the trends that have happened over the last few years. Again, now that we are out of the pandemic. So pre-pandemic, so I pulled some data here. So June of 19 through February of 2020, and we all remember February and March and what happened there. For this 9-month period, think about a couple of key things. One is children, this covers summer, so children out of school, they don't necessarily have access to the school meal programs. And then, of course, we go through the holiday-related food-related holidays rather. So you see here that just a little shy of 6,200 people within the zip code area that North Helpline supports had requested assistance. And then we see here that on the right side, related specifically to food requests, that really heavy on food pantries and food banks, and then help buying food. And when we say help buying food, a lot of that has to do with helping people get connected to SNAP benefits. So it used to be called the Food Stamp Program, so the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. So that's the pre-pandemic era when we have some data. So then let's look at some of the height of it from June of 22 to February of 23. Look at this jump. We went from just about 6,200 to over 10,000 requests for assistance. That's a 68% increase. Again, not surprising. But here's a couple other things that are really interesting. We see on the right side here, food delivery really was kind of a non-event as far as the percentage of people contacting 211 for food delivery. But look at this sharp increase, and we all of a sudden now go to 35, 36%. This is not people calling for DoorDash. These are people who are elderly, who do not have natural supports to be able to have people help them get food when they're doing isolation and quarantine related to the pandemic, people with disability and so forth. So again, it was mentioned before about the home delivery service of North Helpline, really a key critical resource, particularly during the pandemic. And of course, all or nearly all of these folks that are contacting 211, they're food insecure. They're low income or extremely low income. Again, it just points to the importance of the programs related to getting food to people. So if you remember, emergency assistance programs were added or expanded to help people get through the lockdown and economic downturn. So among these mitigation efforts, again, was the expansion of SNAP. So the expansion of SNAP benefits went down in March of 2023. So let's look at what happened when they rolled that back. So we took a snapshot here of March 1st through some of the most recent data that we have just this last September. Expanded SNAP benefits ended March 1st. So what we're seeing here, of course, is food delivery requests are dropping. And some of that has to do, not necessarily that we've eradicated the need for it. Again, not less people are needing food delivered because of isolation and quarantine, but it's still extremely high. It was 45% and now nearly 60% for being able to help buy food. So food delivery down, but again, help buying food. Let's look at this trend again. 39% to now we're trending way up. Just people need help getting food. And so where are they going now? It's not the grocery store. They're going to their food banks. They're going to the North Helpline, 2 locations of food banks. So yeah, again, this is higher cost of living. We all know that. We all feel it. But when you're extremely low income, just pushing you farther down the line. So again, people are going to food banks. They're not going to grocery stores. But have you seen the price of eggs? This is another graphic. I really love this graphic too. So it's actually come down a little bit since January. It's now the carton of eggs is $4.82. So that's good. It's now $4.55. So going in the right direction, but again, it just makes it impossible for people to be able to get food on the table. And we also hear from providers like North Helpline that it costs them more to be able to get the food, to be able to get it to folks. They're impacted as well. And so as you know, North Helpline is one of the largest and most comprehensive service providers of food access and homelessness prevention in North Seattle, in North King County. So let's transition a little bit away from food-related requests to housing requests. So another graphic here, a time period going back to green, meaning September 2022 to September 23, that period, and then going back a year. So what we can see here is this graphic, this last year is green for shelter requests. In the prior year, it is a little bit less. This reflects really, and it's about, the graphic really shows about a 15% increase. Remember the eviction moratoriums that happened? Those are gone. the rental assistance that came with COVID dollars, that's shrinking. So we expect this trend to continue where, again, we're going in the wrong direction as far as getting people housed. I'm going to take a detour really quick. Has anybody heard of this book, Homelessness is a Housing Problem by Greg Colburn? I highly recommend it. He's a professor at the University of Washington, and he has, and his colleague, they explain why homelessness has become a crisis in America. There's a lot of opinions about it, but they really have the data and have revealed the structural conditions. So just a little aside there, if you ever have an opportunity to listen to him speak or read the book, I highly recommend it. Okay, so we've seen some data, we've seen the trends that more people are needing support to access the basics, food and housing. By the way, can you imagine how cool it would be if one of those human rights wasn't just necessarily the Second Amendment for a gun, but we actually had a human right for housing and food? Wouldn't that be amazing? So, something for us to aspire to. So again, let's take a turn here. I want to talk about the people who are doing this work, and this is where they really get passionate. Because bots can't do this work. This is human relationships. And so we have the people that go into the caring field and do this human services work. I've been doing this a long, long time. And it's important for me to be doing direct mission work. But people who go into this work, particularly the frontline employees, they know that we're dependent on skilled and compassionate people who are willing to do the work with limited resources, limited budgets, limited support, lesser pay. Now, who wants to sign up for that career? But we do. But these dynamics are changing because the need for our communities are growing. We have more and more pressure to be able to support people. And what's happening is we have less and less people who are willing to take these jobs. They are difficult, they are low paid, and so we are struggling to be able to keep up with the demands and to have the workforce. So in the fall of 2021, I helped launch the Raising Wages for Changing Lives campaign. This is part of the Seattle Human Services Coalition, so I'm actually going to quote myself. So this is from press releases and all sorts of great publicity that we've received. So as the cost of living in our region continues to soar, it's getting more challenging for human services workers to live in our communities and stay in human services jobs. We must act to ensure human service workers and the difficult work they do is recognized through equitable wages. So let's talk. I'm so glad you're a friendly audience. I don't always get that response. So let's talk a little bit about the definitions around wages. So traditionally, we have looked at competitive wages. So if I'm doing a wage study to see, okay, how are we paying our clinicians against how Sound Mental Health is paying their clinicians or other? Oh, good, we're all paying the same crappy wages? Awesome. They're not going to jump ship and go over there, and they're not coming over here. We're all using these market forces to perpetuate these inequities. And that's often what these surveys are showing you. Great, you're paying this? That's all good. Then there's the livable wage. Wages that are just sufficient to support basic needs, including housing, childcare, food, taxes, transportation, technology, and maybe a little bit of savings, just enough. That's also not the benchmark we should be going. We talk a lot about living wage. That's not the benchmark. So we want to make sure that we are focusing again on equitable wages. Wages that should be paid given the skill, expertise, and value of the work, rather than an historically suppressed market rate which devalues work traditionally done by women, people of color, and presumes self-sacrifice. So no one really questions that nonprofit human service workers are paid less. So we should really look into that and what's the history there. And I think a lot of people share this opinion. Pay is lower because we don't value the work, we don't value the worker, or who they serve. The neighbors that you are supporting through our community, they have the least amount of power in our community. They're not necessarily who our elected officials are listening to. So when we are serving the least empowered people in the community, and we have people that are sacrificing to do that, and we expect, because, oh, you do this work for such crappy pay because of the mission. We cannot tolerate that anymore. This work, again, needs to be, thank you. And I'm so happy to be giving this talk as well, because I know so many people who work in human services, not only helpline employees, are here to hear this, because this is the things that needed to be said a long time ago. I've been in leadership a long time, so I've been complicit. And leaders like me, like Kelly, we need to start speaking this out, because we actually do have a lot of power to change this. So again, we want to make sure that we have some data here as well. So there was a wage study done by 501 Commons. And this, again, is data that came from 2021. So it's a little bit dated, but here's the thing, is the conditions have gotten worse as far as the cost of living. Wages haven't been keeping up. The cost of living has soared, as we all know. So where do the wages stand? So the data in 2021 said that a wage that covers basic necessities without subsidies for an average household of King County, you have to have about $80,000 in income. And again, that's the living wage. Look at what the data tells you about what the frontline staff have been making. A child care assistant, $38,000. Shelter coordinator, $41,000. You can read that. Again, we have to use the data to help tell the story and bolster how important it is that we talk about this. Let's talk a little bit about the impacts. There's also a business case for this. There's a human case. That's what we're really focusing on. But at the end of the day, there's a business case for this. The human service sector is declining. There are more people exiting human services that are coming back into it. And again, I think we've done a pretty good job of explaining why. And so we have to know that attracting and retaining employees is really, really expensive. And when we have high turnover, that, of course, is a business need. We're spending a whole lot of money on training and dealing with the turnover and the expense of that, and constant recruiting, being short-staffed. That's the other impact. When human service organizations are chronically short-staffed, the people who are working, it's on their backs. This is where we find a tremendous amount of burnout, people who are getting sick. They're not as productive. It's not sustainable. That's part of the business case. It impacts the quality of care and building trusting relationships with the people that you're serving, with your neighbors. Imagine having to tell your story over and over again to a new person coming into the organization. That's disruptive, and a lot of this is really trust-based, so we're losing that. The other thing we're seeing in the decline is programs are closing. They're cutting their hours. We have many, many examples of this, or they're not expanding at all. One example is King County government had sent out an RFP about 2 years ago and said, we have funding to be able to have response for a nonprofit to operate a shelter. Nobody responded to the RFP because the funds to be able to operate the shelter appropriately weren't there, and also because of that, there wasn't enough funding for equitable wages. They knew they couldn't get the staff to do it. So you can't open a shelter and have it run, by itself. You can't do this with chatbots. It has to be people. Even my organization, we've had to, Crisis Connections, have to make some sacrifices. We unfortunately will have to cut our 211 program hours. We will not be laying off staff. It will not impact the staff, but we need to trim the hours because we have about sometimes an hour and a half wait for somebody who's calling. They're in an emergency and the queue is full. If I could hire a dozen more employees right now, maybe we would have a reasonable wait time. So it hits the bottom line operations. Again, this is a human impact, but also it's just not smart business. We talked before about the impact of staff. Folks working 2-3 jobs just to try to make ends meet. There are people who work in human services that are at risk of losing their housing. And certainly many of them qualify for the very services that they're trying to connect people to. We can't not continue to perpetuate this inequity. It's immoral and it's unacceptable. We have to value our employees, neighbors, volunteers, donors, and partners equally. So let's go back to the Raising Wages for Changing Lives campaign. Again, data can be very powerful. You know, we use stories to lift the hearts and gain awareness there, but data really sticks with people and tells a story. Particularly with certain sectors of the elected official lot. We want to make sure we have the data. So what we did with our campaign is said, fine, we're going to be able to get funding from the city of Seattle, and they're going to pay for a wage equity study. And they did. We had, the city of Seattle had granted us $600,000 to do a wage equity study. That was groundbreaking in of itself. So I do have to give credit to the city of Seattle for that. And so what we wanted to do was a pay equity analysis. No more comparable wages. Oh, I'm doing crappy wages just like them. Excellent, we're in the same boat. We want to make sure that we are using some sophisticated tools that are used in the private sector all the time. So we sent out an RFP and we got a lot of responses. We selected the University of Washington School of Social Work to conduct this research study. It's groundbreaking because it's the only study we're aware of that actually tries to quantify the wage penalty for choosing work in the caring industry. So we used a job evaluation tool. So let me explain that briefly. So the idea is that you score jobs based on the skills and responsibility, the difficulty of it, the education requirements, all these kind of components. And then you compare that to jobs that are not in human services, can be in the private sector, any position that have that same component as far as the same ratings. And so now we actually, looks like apples to oranges is really apples to apples. So we did that work, or paid them to do that work within human services. So again, we're no longer looking at livable wages or comparisons. So what did that tell us? So for the first time, we actually have the data. Work done by human service workers is undervalued relative to its required levels of skill and difficulty as measured by the job evaluation tool. Wage gaps revealed in the market analysis between human service workers and workers in other industries do not reflect lower pay because human service work is easier, human service work is less skilled, or less demanding than other jobs. I underline this part, I love it. This study came back and said rather the pay is less despite the high level of skill, responsibility, and difficulty of human services jobs, right? How often do we hear, well, you work in a nonprofit mission, you know, it's not for people who are really working. Not true. We now have proof, I knew it before, we all have proof that this work is extremely difficult and takes a high amount of skill and a high amount of emotional intelligence and compassion. Next slide here is actually quantifying it. The wage analysis study results quantified the wage penalty. So looking at this, the second column from the left, nonprofit human service workers in Washington earn 37% less than similar workers in for-profit non-care industries. That's massive. Workers in for-profit and government human services, so think about jobs in King County, City of Seattle that are human services, they're paid 30% less. Workers in other care industries, think education, think healthcare, are paid 11% less. So we actually have some data on this. A couple other things that came out of the study. Workers who leave human services jobs for a different industry see a net pay increase of 7% within a year compared to the workers who stay. So automatically, if you just decide to move out of human services, you will see immediately 7% or so increase. So we wonder why people are leaving, right? Here's the other thing. Workers of color are overrepresented in the lowest paid human services jobs, including frontline work. Again, no surprise, but we have a reputable study that says, here's the data behind it. So we have the data, so what? And what do we do? Again, we're just shining a light on the impact for the first time and having these conversations. We need to secure repeatable funds to pay equitable wages. If individuals and corporations pay their fair share, that's all we're asking, pay your fair share, we can fix this. There's a lot of wealth and money. We need to have that follow our values as a community. So North Helpline Board and leadership has stepped up to eliminate wage equity, and I think you may hear more about that. So kudos to the board and leadership of North Helpline. We need bold action. We need bold action. So I want to bring it back to you. Your support today will help ensure North Helpline is stable and won't have to cut its hours or its programs, especially at a time, as you know, these services are needed more and more. And your support today will ensure North Helpline is able to erase the wage penalty and be a leader in stopping the cycle of poverty and practices that are rooted in racism and misogyny. So thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for listening.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I have a little bit of a story to share with you. So after the excitement of Elise, sorry to take it down a little bit, but we'll get through it. My name is Oliver Frost. I serve as the Development and Communications Manager here at North Helpline. I changed my name to Oliver recently, so you may have known me as Brandon formerly. I thought I'd get out of this whole thing if I did that and no one knew my name, but here we are. So, yeah, and jokes aside, I'm truly honored to be here with you. It's a privilege to represent North Helpline. They're an incredible organization, and it's been wonderful getting to know the staff and the community that we foster here. So, all right, we're taking it back. So, thanks, Latina, I heard you. The essentials of life, food, shelter, and community, these are things none of us can do without. It is here in this core of humanity that we find the work of North Helpline. Tonight, I will share my personal story wherein food and shelter play a significant role. I was born to a Navy brat and my mother, just aged 19. They wed, but after a year parted ways. I landed in the home of my father, who had greater means to provide for me at the time. Living with my father and stepmother exposed me to some of my first experiences with hunger and what it meant to have a home. For the better part of 3 years, I existed within the four walls of a basement bedroom. There was one window about the size of a loaf of bread, which you could barely see through. I was not allowed to leave this room. I was not allowed to eat, drink, or use the restroom until called upon. I was whipped with belts, pushed downstairs, and left to cope as best a child can with being well and truly alone. Some of my earliest memories involved training myself to wake up in the middle of the night so that I could sneak up stairs and steal food from my parents' kitchen. So terrified was I of being caught that I dared not risk turning on the faucet or climbing on the counter to find a cup in these midnight excursions. Toilet water would make do. It was quieter that way. When I was allowed to eat, my choice of food was always made for me. Wet, canned spinach was the favorite for my stepmom. She'd watch me as I ate, making sure I finished every last bite. I never failed to. If I didn't eat then, I simply wouldn't that day. When I was finally old enough for kindergarten, school was the only time I was allowed to exist outside of this basement. I would walk myself the 8 blocks to kindergarten each day. It was there that I made my first friend, Charlie. He'd share food with me sometimes. At school, I learned about shame. One day, my teacher asked me to go and fetch the snacks we were to eat during reading time. I opened up the cupboard and was in shock. It was a veritable treasure trove to the 5-year-old me. I grabbed the snacks as I was told, but I hesitated. I was so hungry, and food was right there in front of me. But I left it. It wasn't right to steal, I thought. But the next time I was asked to do this, I chose differently. If it was wrong to eat when you were in pain, then I would be wrong. I grabbed the snacks from Mrs. I and quickly shoved 2 or 3 Oreos in my mouth. It wasn't much, but to me, that was pure gold. Naturally, a child full of Oreos is not exactly easy to miss, so I was caught in the act, and in shame, I felt just how different from the others I was in my class. I first asked to die when I was 5 years old. I would look at the translucent hints of light that passed through my bread loaf window and make a wish. Even then, I knew love. When I was able to see my mother, all was right in the world. I had food, I had shelter, I had community and a home. But this basement, this was not home. It was a shelter, yes. It was even food, though not enough. But it was no home. I want to share with you a moment I remember vividly from this time. I was in the back of my mother's car, driving back to Spokane after a brief visitation. I woke after a nap, and my stomach fell into a pit. I had slept away the 6-hour drive, and as I looked out the window, I could see the city rise into view. I had wasted the last moments I had left with my mother, and I didn't know when I would see her again. In this moment, I hated myself for being so foolish, for choosing to sleep. To comfort myself, I reached for a bag of snacks, and I picked out a generic brand vanilla cream cookies. To this day, I will never eat those cookies without remembering my mother and the pedestal upon which food rests, even the most painful of moments. The bruises on my body gave my father away. After tirelessly working to rescue me, I moved in with my mother when I was 6. My father agreed to give me up so long as he wouldn't have to pay child support. To provide for me, my mother set aside her greater ambitions and worked. She fought for food, for housing, and for my happiness. Unlike my father, my mother always made sure I had food on the table. Still, the ugly face of poverty reared its head again and again. For school, I would bring a packed lunch most days. Cafeteria lunches were too expensive. Again, I felt otherized. I learned that no one has the right to eat, not even children, and it felt wrong. Even so, lunch was often my favorite part of the school day. A special snack in my pack could easily make my day. At times, it was bittersweet. As children do, I would compare my food to that of my friends, and sometimes I would find myself wanting. They had cool snacks that I didn't. They had leftovers when I had finished my meal and I was still hungry. I tried not to tell my mom just how I felt about these things. She never said so, but I learned that some things just weren't possible for kids like me. I needed to be realistic. I knew how hard she worked. As I grew into adolescence and then adulthood, food remained a cornerstone of how I experienced life. Nothing made me feel the weight of poverty as intimately as the times when food was scarce. I remember standing in line for hours with my mom, waiting for our turn at the local food bank. The wait alone was enough to drive a child mad, but the public nature of standing in the open made it all the more humiliating. Would people know at school see me? Would strangers driving by judge my family? The stories on the news about the homeless and poor certainly made me feel like they would. Like the more we tried to access resources to lift us up, the closer to trash we were viewed. That we should suffer alone and out of sight so that others could feel more comfortable. After high school, I left home for college. We had no money for it, but I wanted an education. Everyone I knew had told me that a degree was required to afford life. It wasn't a question about if I could afford to take out student loans or not. There was no choice in my mind if I hoped to live. The only thing it felt like people viewed worse than the poor was the uneducated poor. And I was going to do whatever I could to not be viewed as that. Even with student loans, after tuition and books, I had nothing left for food. I lost 30 pounds during the worst year, and I only weigh about 140 to begin with. The campus food bank only provided one small bag per week. No fruits, no vegetables, only cans. But it got me through. It was in college that I learned about the role of food in building community. So many of our connection points with friends, family, work, and peers are all centered around a meal. I mean, just look at us right now. Not being able to engage with people in this most fundamental human way made me feel inhuman. When friends would go out after class for a study session, I would join them and sit while others ate. They were all kind, and they would offer to buy me a meal, but I could not accept it. I could not let myself be viewed as so incapable of providing for myself. I could not allow myself to be otherized again. Instead, I would sit there and talk like it was of no consequence. I'd already eaten, or I wasn't hungry. But inside, I was deeply broken. It had been over 15 years since those nights looking out that loaf of bread window. Still, there I was with pangs of hunger. Time was passing, but it felt like I was standing still. For children of low-income families like mine, the wonder of childhood is a luxury many cannot afford. Often, like me, they must grow up early. The concerns are more immediate. Will I have something to eat for dinner tonight? Will my mom be safe? Thoughts of the future and our dreams shrink. We see how our family is treated, and we know that our future is limited. I lost my childhood before it even began. I could not see my future past 18 because I did not think I would live that long. I saw how hard my mom worked to provide for us, and how could I possibly have the strength and skill that she did to survive? My very presence on this stage is not something I thought would be possible, but I'm happy to say that I was wrong. I did survive. After college, I moved to Seattle for work. My 170 square foot studio was small, but sure, it was home. I eventually made my way to North Helpline, and it's here that my life story changed trajectory. I learned what joy is. I can afford to buy groceries for the first time. I'm redefining my relationship with food and my home, and I'm learning to imagine what my future might hold. North Helpline believes that food and housing should be a human right, that children should not have to wonder when their next meal will be, that everyone is enough, that our humanity alone implores us to ensure that all in our community have food and shelter. My experience with these core human necessity tells me that our work is important. Like my mother, we must be tireless. We must not accept the state of the world and do everything we can to improve the lives of one another. My story is not unique. I am but one of countless children made to grow up too early. My family won like so many others right here in our very own community. I have no doubt that many in this very room have experienced the pangs of hunger at some point in their lives, have known the fear for their home and children as rent continued to rise. I assert that there is no just reason for allowing our neighbors to be denied these basic needs. Food, shelter, and community, there is already enough for everyone, should we choose that. As Michelle so eloquently shared with us, the service sector is a bit of a hot mess. Far too often, city contracts and grant makers expect organizations like ours to do more with less, to somehow direct all of our fundings to programs, but not the staff that make those programs possible, to grow and maintain our programs year over year with funding that doesn't even keep up with inflation, not to mention actual levels of food and housing insecurity in our community. We at North Helpline may not be able to change that just yet, but we can change ourselves. Over the past 2 years, informed by the invaluable wage equity study Michelle shared with us, we've increased staff compensation over 30%, both to combat rampant inflation and to bring all staff to a baseline where they can afford to live in the city they work in. Before this change, several of our staff had to use our services to ensure that they could continue to feed their families while working at North Helpline. We chose to say that this was unacceptable, that the values we proclaim to have and the mission we hold does not align with a staff that faces the same injustices we claim to address. So we changed. As much as I wish it were not true, food and housing insecurity will be with us as long as we collectively allow such injustices to occur. Until then, we must accept that organizations like North Helpline are legitimate places of work and in it for the long haul. So long as food and housing remain out of reach for many in our community, we must equip organizations like North Helpline to be sustainable. Now, I know this is just the beginning for us. My lived experience has shown me the value that these services hold. They speak to the very core of humanity. Set aside politics, prejudice, and pomp, and we are left with these same core needs. If you believe, like I do, that every neighbor should have access to that which makes us human, please support our work. Until every neighbor has food on the head, until every neighbor has food on the table and a roof overhead, North Helpline will be here, bridging the gap. Thank you for your time.
Hi. Hello, neighbors. My name is Louren, and I am the Food Access Director at North Helpline. Back in 1989, North Helpline began when a group of local neighbors saw that together they could pool funding to support one another during a time of crisis. Over 30 years later, North Helpline has become one of the largest homelessness prevention organizations in North King County. When it comes to being there for all of our neighbors, few things are as personal as making sure that we all have a place to call home. When she unexpectedly received an eviction notice, one neighbor was very confused, thinking it was a mistake. This is how this disabled senior found that her caregiver had stolen her rental payments. Yeah. We were able to support this neighbor by contacting her landlord, who we have built a relationship with, and providing them with $600 funding through our homelessness prevention program. Last year, we connected over 700 households in our community with direct assistance to keep families housed with utilities turned on. Over the past 10 years, North Helpline has invested nearly $1.5 million in keeping our community in their homes.
Yeah.
We know that the best way to solve homelessness in our community is by preventing folks from losing their homes to begin with. And when North Helpline keeps the neighbors safe in their own home, our entire community stays more whole. Tonight, we are starting our Raise the Paddle at $5,000. Together, we can bring peace of mind to families in our community, a home to rest in, to study and learn in, and to laugh and share a meal in, a place for every neighbor. A gift of $5,000 can ensure that at least 10 families in our community maintain their housing and utilities. If you can pledge $5,000, please raise your paddle.
Next, we have Jenn up. Jenn, come on up. This is the $2,500 level.
Well, as I said earlier, my name is Jenn EagleSpeaker, and I'm the Client Service Coordinator for North Helpline. I have 4 children. Some of you know them: Alex, Ariana, Annie, and Aiden. 3 that presently live with me. I have 1 successful launch of a human into the world. Thank you. I have found myself a single parent. Not something ever planning on being, but it happens. As a single mom, my finances are limited and at times have been non-existent. Growing up, I was raised by an incredibly strong woman, a single mom who raised my sisters and I. My grandmother was also a single mom during war times, having to take care of kids on her own and doing most everything on her own with very little money. Times were tough. I was raised that you can feel the forehead when your child is sick. Then you check the feet to see how hot they are. You check for signs of dehydration, dry or chapped lips, fatigue, etc. You do cool compresses, small bits of water every few minutes, simple home remedies. Well, when the pandemic struck and my kids got COVID, I panicked, as most parents did when it struck their homes. When I walked into the store and made my purchases of things you purchase for a sick kid, 7-Up, popsicles, chicken soup, and a thermometer. I bought 3. It may seem a funny little thing that most parents have, no big deal. But it was a privilege for me. A thermometer was a luxury item. I looked down at the care package I had been able to put together for my son, and I thought, wow, look what I can do. I held back tears as I made my purchase, the memories of times when I couldn't afford a thermometer, that anxiety I had gone through just for one of my kids' colds. I wasn't having to endure that right now. The things that my grandmother had passed down to my mother and she had passed down to me, the generations of poverty that had been passed down to me, the ways of my grandmothers. I was breaking that cycle at that very moment. I held back tears as I made my way back to the car that I was able to purchase with a living wage with North Helpline. I sat there in the parking lot that rainy night and wept tears of joy and relief that I could do something so small, yet so really big. I was looking in the face of generational poverty and saying, no, not today. Looking back on that evening still hurts, still hits home and still impacts me with gratitude though, that I get to serve my community and still take care of my family. North Helpline has made significant investments in its staff, all staff, so that working here doesn't have to be a sacrifice. We want to make sure that our staff can live and serve in the community that we love. For me, these investments allow me to worry less about providing for my babies. I know that my work values me as much as I value our mission. I'm asking for a pledge of $2,500 to ensure that North Helpline can continue to support our staff. Because when we are able to retain our staff, we are able to retain the connections with our neighbors that are made. Neighbors helping neighbors with dignity, keeping food on the table and a roof overhead. If you can make a gift of $2,500, please raise your paddle.
Next up is Claire.
Thank you, Johnny. Shout out. Hello, everyone. My name is Claire. I am the Food Access Manager at the Lake City location of North Helpline. I started at North Helpline as a volunteer in 2002 as a way to connect with and give back to my community. As a lifelong resident of Lake City and as someone who has struggled with food insecurity in the past, North Helpline was the perfect place for me to feed my community. I became the Food Access Manager after serving, thank you. I became the Food Access Manager after serving as an AmeriCorps term as the Home Delivery Coordinator, which serves our neighbors who are unable to come to our in-person distributions, whether that's due to lack of transportation or mobility issues, disability or illness, childcare, many other reasons. We work to ensure that all of our neighbors have food on the table and a roof overhead. Keeping food on the table for our community means thinking about everyone in our community, and our home delivery program keeps us engaged with neighbors who might not otherwise be accessible and meeting them where they are. Since our home delivery program expanded overnight during the pandemic, we require standardized boxes to maximize both the amount of food and the amount of deliveries that we are able to complete. Boxes with handles that are easier to maneuver for our mobility challenged neighbors, boxes that are easier to stack into our vehicles or our volunteer vehicles, things like that, making it easier for folks with lifting restrictions to lift their boxes. A gift of $1,000 provides enough boxes to complete approximately 550 deliveries every month. If you can make a gift of $1,000, please raise your paddle.
My name's Kelly. I'm the Executive Director at North Helpline. Tonight, I'm stepping in on behalf of our Community Connector, Roger, to share about our Community Connector work. He is on a well-deserved sabbatical, so we're wishing him well on the East Coast right now. A key part of what makes a trip to North Helpline impactful is our approach to serving the whole person. Our neighbors get to know us when they visit the food bank regularly. Being a resource that they can rely on builds trust and leads to folks asking us if we know how to help with a variety of different issues or needs that their families have. To honor the time of every neighbor and potentially more completely end hunger, our community connectors are there. They listen to what our neighbors are experiencing and work with them to find referral opportunities in our community. We can't offer every service at North Helpline, but we can connect folks with programs that do and prevent the runaround that happens by doing a warm handoff. We build upon what we have, like making sure a neighbor who has a difficult time preparing food knows about the meals that HIP offer, or offers a connection to a neighbor who needs dental care to Seattle Indian Health Board, which has a dental van at our food bank every other Thursday. So getting them signed up for those appointments. Sometimes a listening ear is the best service that we can give our neighbors, and our community connectors, Roger and Kissy, excel at that. Our lives are complex, and so are the issues facing our community. When one trip to North Helpline can address the lived experience of each neighbor, however that shows up, we better realize our mission. A pledge of $500 will help ensure that we can be there for the whole person to every person who visits us. If you can, please make a gift of $500 and raise your paddle.
My name is Esther Pinheiro Hall, and I am the Client Services Manager at North Helpline. And I mean, sitting here listening to these personal stories of some of my coworkers, and when you hear the terminology food insecurity, it sounds so, kind of sanitized, and, it's a phrase, it's a thing that everyone's saying, but when you actually hear the personal stories, it just has such an impact. And I was nervous about coming tonight and sharing a little bit of my story, but obviously, a lot of my coworkers and other folks, volunteers, staff, donors, have had some of these experiences. So I feel like I'm in a safe place to share. My family struggled with food insecurity to the point where sometimes all we had was scrape the mayo jar and slap it on some, the white Wonder Bread with the little blue balloons. And that's what we had for dinner, especially at the end of the month when our benefits would run out and my mother was laid off. So those are things that I remember and I don't take for granted. And even to this day, there are times where just for the heck of it, I grab some bread and slap some mayonnaise on there and just say, thank you. I can, I don't have to do this, but I want to do this just to remember the blessings being the first in my family to go to college. So, so, and in addition to that, my family originally came from Puerto Rico. My mother, Huepa, Boricua. So my mother, even though she spoke English, she had a heavy accent. So there were times where I would accompany her to appointments, for benefits or for health reasons, and I would be pulled out of school to do this. So I understand the importance of having services in our own, native mother tongue to be able to feel comfortable. And sometimes you get comments from people, well, if they come to America, they should really learn English. And that's, yes, we should, but the thing is, people are learning English. It's harder than it looks. And it takes time to learn English. And when you're dealing with, documents and medications and things like that, it's having it in your own language will help you make, good choices and safe choices. And walking into North Helpline and seeing someone who speaks your language, who looks like you, who can provide those services either face-to-face. We have volunteers that speak multiple languages. I'm able to help our Spanish speakers in our community, and we have other staff members who speak other languages, Russian, Tigrinya, Amharic, and it's just a, it's really makes people feel very, very, very welcome to do that. And in those instances where we can't, have those particular languages, right there, we do have interpretation and translation services. So one of the things that we started doing was a contract to provide services for translations. We did a survey in 10 different languages. Of course, we couldn't do all 20 languages that our neighbors actually speak over 20 languages that come to the food bank. We have a very, very diverse neighbors that use our services. But for $250, we can provide 7 hours of translation services and interpretation services. So if you're willing to support us, just make our neighbors feel safe and comfortable and welcomed in a language that they understand, more comfortable in. If you can raise your paddle for $250, that would be amazing.
Hi, everyone. My name is Johnny. I'm the food bank supervisor at North Helpline, and I'm here to talk about raising $100 to support getting culturally relevant food to our food banks. So to put it simply, having culturally relevant food is a way that we can present a small way or a small reminder of home to the communities we serve. And when I'm talking about home, I'm really talking about culture. So for myself, like growing up, I'm Ethiopian, and yeah, shouts out to my culture. And so eating like Ethiopian food is actually like the earliest way that I connected to my culture. And so when I'm at Lake City, when I'm at Bitter Lake, and I see the grain F, which is our ancient grain to make injera, like when I see that at the food bank, I get really excited because it reminds me of my childhood, but it makes me think about the East African community we serve. It's the same feeling when I hear that we get a shipment of halal meat, also like bok choy, peppers, the foods that really hit the cultures that we serve. And so, yeah, I'm going to ask you to raise $100 to help us continue reminding our communities of their home. Thanks.
Thank you, Johnny. Thank you so much.
I want to start by sharing that last year we distributed almost 2.5 million pounds of food to our community. And had our generous volunteers donate over 23,000 hours of service to their community. Without those pieces, North Helpline doesn't work. But this number also makes us work as well. And so this evening, as part of the Polaris event, including sponsorships, table purchases, and donations tonight, our gross number is $96,330. So thank you, community, for showing up and sharing your wealth and your time and your talents with us. And we'll keep doing the work as long as it is needed. Thank you.